Operations in a Global Environment. Welcome back. This is Lecture 3, Operations in a Global Environment, and it closes out our Week 2 block on Operations Strategy. So far we have asked what strategy is and how firms compete through their operations. Today we widen the lens. We look at the whole world as the operating environment. Here is the roadmap. First, we ground the topic in Brooklyn, because global operations is closer to you than you think. Then we cover the 6 strategic reasons firms go global. Then the trade agreements that set the rules and the risks that come with crossing borders. We will spend time on sustainability as a strategy, not just as ethics. After that, we learn one quantitative tool, the factor rating method, and we work 2 full examples together. We finish with the trends reshaping supply chains right now. Let us begin. Brooklyn is already global. Before we touch a single framework, let us start where you actually live. You are in one of the most globally connected cities on Earth. Look at the examples on screen. Your phone is designed in California, with chips from Taiwan, assembled in China and sold here. Your coffee begins as beans in Ethiopia or Colombia, gets roasted in Red Hook, and is poured in Park Slope. Your sneakers are designed in Oregon, made in Vietnam, shipped through Los Angeles and worn in Flatbush. Your hospital runs on devices from Germany and medicines from India. Your corner bodega stocks products from more than 30 countries. Here is the why behind this slide. Global operations is not an abstract idea invented for a textbook. It is the invisible system that puts products in your hands every single day. When that system breaks, you feel it immediately. So understanding it is not optional for anyone doing business in New York City. Why firms go global? So if global operations is everywhere, the natural question is why? Heiser gives us 6 strategic reasons, and they are laid out here in 2 rows of 3. Reduce costs is the obvious one. Labor, materials, and overhead vary enormously across countries, which is why so much apparel and electronics is made in Vietnam. Improve the supply chain means moving closer to your materials or your suppliers, the way Toyota builds near its steel supply. Provide better goods and services means a local team reads local taste better than a distant head office. That is why the McDonald's menu changes by country. Understand markets means presence gives you intelligence that no survey can buy. Learn to improve operations matters, because world-class practice is scattered across the globe. German engineering, Japanese lean, Israeli innovation. And attract global talent, because the best people are simply not all in one place. Here is the key point. Every global decision should trace back to one of these 6. If you cannot name the reason, you do not have a strategy. The global trade framework. Knowing why firms go global is one thing. Knowing what they are legally allowed to do is another. This slide shows the rule book. 4 agreements, 1 in each quadrant. The World Trade Organization sits at the top left. 168 member nations, lower tariffs, and a place to settle disputes. That is the global baseline. The USMCA, which replaced NAFTA, links the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The auto industry is the classic case. A single vehicle crosses the border several times before it is finished. The European Union goes furthest. 27 nations, 1 market, with goods, services, capital, and people moving freely. A firm can source in Poland, build in Germany, and sell in France with almost no friction. ASEAN is building something similar across 10 nations and 670 million people. Here is what to take away. These agreements decide where you can source, where you can build, and what it costs to move goods. Trade policy is operations policy. Risks of global operations. Trade agreements open doors. This slide is about what can come through them. The image is the COVID-era supply crisis, and it is the sharpest lesson we have. Factories in China closed, And within weeks, hospitals here could not get protective equipment, dealers could not get semiconductors, and shelves emptied. Look at the 6 risks around it. Political risk, where the US-China trade war added more than $300 billion in tariffs. Supply chain disruption, where a single source part stops an entire plant. Currency risk, where a 10% swing in exchange rates can erase an offshore cost advantage overnight. Quality risk, because distance makes oversight hard, as Mattel learned when it recalled 20 million toys. Ethical and sustainability risk in supplier countries. And geopolitical instability, where a war disrupts wheat and neon gas at the same time. The conclusion is not that global is bad. It is that global requires risk management. Diversify suppliers. Buffer the critical parts. Watch geopolitics as closely as you watch inventory. Sustainability as a global operation strategy. One of those risks deserves its own slide, and that is sustainability. Read the quote at the top. Stevenson defines it as meeting present needs without compromising future generations. Now look at the 3 columns. Environmental covers carbon reduction, renewable energy, waste elimination, and circular supply chains. IKEA is the example, with a 100% renewable energy target and a furniture take-back program. Social covers fair labor standards, supplier codes of conduct, and community investment. Patagonia publishes its full supplier list. Economic covers long-term profitability, resilience, and stakeholder value. Unilever tied its sustainable living plan to 70% of its growth. Here is the part students often miss. This column is not charity. Firms with strong sustainability practices tend to have more resilient supply chains. They attract better people, and they increasingly borrow money more cheaply. ESG has become a mainstream operating metric, not a niche concern. The factor rating method. We have covered the strategy and the risk. Now we need a way to actually decide. This slide introduces the factor rating method, the most widely used tool for global location and sourcing choices. Look at the formula in the middle. Total score equals the sum of weight times score. Weight is the relative importance of a factor from 0 to 1, and all weights must add to 1.0. Score is how well an option performs on that factor, usually on a 1 to 100 scale. The 5 steps on the left take you through it. Identify the factors, weight them, score each option, multiply, then sum, and the highest total wins. On the right, you see when to use it. Choosing a plant site, picking a supplier, evaluating outsourcing, or comparing distribution centers. The real power here is transparency. Instead of gut feel or office politics, you document what matters and how much, and you can test it. Change one weight and see whether the answer holds. Let us work 2 examples. Solved example. 1. Manufacturing location. Here is the method in action. Follow the table with me. Brooklyn Tech Apparel is choosing a manufacturing site among Vietnam, Mexico, and the United States. The left column lists 6 factors, and the second column holds the weights. Notice labor cost carries the heaviest weight, 0.30, because this is an apparel company. Now read across the labor cost row. Vietnam scores 90, which weighted gives 27.0, the strongest single number on the slide. But drop down to proximity to the US market. Vietnam scores only 40, worth 6.0, while Mexico scores 90. Mexico also scores 90 on trade agreement access, thanks to USMCA. Now look at the bottom row, the totals. Vietnam 67.25, Mexico 77.5, the United States 73.0. Mexico wins. The United States is strong on infrastructure and stability, but loses on labor. Vietnam wins on labor and loses on distance. Mexico balances both. This is the exact arithmetic behind the nearshoring headlines. Solved example 2, supplier selection. Same tool, very different decision. This time, a Brooklyn restaurant group is picking a produce supplier. 3 candidates across the table. Farm Fresh Local from New York, AgriCorp Regional from New Jersey, and Global Produce International from Mexico. Look first at the weights column. Quality and freshness carries 0.35, the heaviest weight, because for a restaurant that is non-negotiable. Farm Fresh scores 95 there, giving a weighted 33.25. Now find the price row. Global Produce scores 90 on price, the best number in that row, but only 65 on quality. With quality weighted so heavily, that gap decides the outcome. Farm Fresh also leads on delivery reliability and sustainability. Now the totals. Farm Fresh 83.0, AgriCorp 77.0, Global Produce 66.25. Here is the insight. The cheapest option lost. If this were a fast food chain competing on price, the weights would change and the winner might flip. The method makes your strategy visible in the numbers. Nearshoring, reshoring, and friendshoring. Now let us bring the analysis up to the present moment. The image shows a modern electric vehicle plant, and the 4 boxes show how sourcing strategy is shifting. Offshoring, at the top left, dominated from the 1990s through the 2010s. The driver was labor cost. The weakness was long lead times and fragility. Nearshoring moves production closer to home, for example, from China to Mexico, trading a little labor cost for shorter lead times and trade access. Reshoring brings production all the way back. The CHIPS Act committed $52 billion to rebuild American semiconductor manufacturing, because depending on one island for the most advanced chips became a security question. Friendshoring is the newest idea. Source only from geopolitically aligned nations. Notice what changed. For 3 decades, the weight sat almost entirely on cost. Today, resilience and security carry real weight too. In factor rating terms, the weights moved. That is what is redrawing the map. Key takeaways. Let us pull the whole lecture together. 5 takeaways on screen. 1. Firms go global for 6 reasons: cost, supply chain, market access, learning, talent, and better service. Always know which one is driving the decision, because the operational implications differ. 2. Trade agreements set the rules of the game. Trade policy is operations policy. 3. Going global creates real risk, political, currency, quality, and disruption. Managing that risk is part of the job, not an afterthought. 4. The factor rating method gives you a transparent, defensible way to compare locations and suppliers. 5. Nearshoring, reshoring, and friendshoring are redrawing supply chains right now, and these are the decisions you will be asked to make. That also closes our Week 2 strategy block. You now have the language of strategy, the tools of comparison, and the global context they operate in.